Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We're incredibly excited to have you all here. As you file in, tell us your name, tell us where you're located. And while you chat in, I will give a quick rundown of some housekeeping things, and then I'll introduce our panelists and we will get started. First thing to note is that we are recording this webinar, and the recording will be sent out to everyone that is registered. With that recording, you will also get a copy of the slide deck as well as a certificate of attendance. We may reference a variety of resources today. All of the links and downloadables that we do reference will also come your way in about 24 hours after we wrap up our time together today. Next, there is a chat box available to you in your Zoom window. Take a moment to find it. And again, let us know who you are, where you're joining us from. We are an interactions company, so we want to interact with you. Send in those comments. We have staff on hand to engage with you. If you have specific questions that you want addressed, please use the Q&A function in Zoom. So Q&A for questions, chat for comments. We might also hold some of your questions for the very end. We will do our best to address as many of your questions as we can by the end of the webinar. All right, with that, I will quickly introduce today's panel. I will start with you, Grace. Grace Funk is our Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives. Grace has been involved with the class tool since its inception. So she has that research background and is in tune with the core vision of the class tool. And with her time spent working in the field, she's also a scholar and a strong advocate for the many ways the tool has needed to evolve over the years and in order to best support the field. So we're happy to have you with us today, Grace. Welcome. Next is Katie Twilley. Katie is the Senior Product Manager here at Teachstone. She oversees all of the work related to executing Class Second Edition. She works closely with the teams developing the content and the trainings for Class Second Ed. In addition to that, she is supporting the rollout of Class Second Ed both internally and to the field. So thank you for being with us today, Kate. All right, Grace, I will launch this poll and throw the floor over to you.
All right. Well, again, thank you all for being here today. As always, it's so great to connect. There's a poll being launched, so what we'd love to hear is who is joining us today. So select what best describes your role. If you're a teacher, caregiver, a leader, instructional leader, mentor, coach. We see a lot. Okay, they're coming in. We have about 20 seconds. Data collector, researcher, interesting mix of folks so far. Yeah, so oh wow, keep it coming. I love watching data. Love watching data in real time. It's so exciting. All right, so far, yeah, it's looking like we have, by and large, instructional leaders here. So mentors, coaches, trainers, but we have site leaders as well. A nice mix across the board here, and implementation leaders and educators, caregivers. Thank you all for being here. And for those of you who are in other, let us know your role in the chat, and we'll review all of that so that we can make sure that, again, the goal here is to make sure that whatever your role is and however you come to this moment, that you feel supported and understand what some of your next steps can be. So thank you all for being here. So we're going to talk a little bit about our goals for today and our agenda. So the first one, and some of you might have joined our last webinar where we talked really at a large scale around some of the whys driving these enhancements for Class Second Edition and how some of them will show up. And we're going to get a little bit more into that today, of really understanding this evolution of the class tool and what that really means for all of us. We'll then be able to actually look at pathways, some samples of what this transition to Second Edition might look like for each of you based on what your role is and how you'll use the tool. We recognize that for many, that's what we need to understand next is, this sounds great, but how? What does this mean for me? What does this mean for my program, for my staff? So we'll talk through some sample pathways so folks have a better understanding of that, and then really come back to how in this moment, we already know the class tool itself is set up to be a holistic approach to understanding quality and growing quality in classrooms, and that with some of these additions, to the class and refinements with class second edition, we're leaning in even more heavily into this idea of a comprehensive holistic system to think about quality improvement across every aspect of our educational system. So we're very excited for this today. So we're going to jump right in and start talking about the evolution. So let's think about the concept of an evolution. So I believe I said in the last webinar that when we talk about change, that concept can be scary. The idea of something new, something different, and it's also really important. Change is often an indicator of growth and learning, and so we've really been honing in on this term evolution and thinking about how we're gradually evolving the core of the class tool to continue to make it better to use and more accurate to use and more responsible in how it's used in the field. And so what we're seeing here and what you'll all be experiencing as a part of this kind of first set of enhancements with class second edition is some of those early steps that we're seeing as we continue to evolve. And it's also just a first step in the commitment to continued evolution, to do our part and hold our responsibility as components of this system who are trying to measure and make sense of quality in classrooms in making sure that what we're doing is right and is accurate and is actually reflecting what we know is going on out there in the field. So we're in a moment of evolution. So let's talk a little bit more about what that means and how that's showing up for the class. So if you joined last time, so this left image here, these are what we think of as our class measurement suite. So we've always had, and Teachstone's always had these components of the suite. So you think about the class manual. So you have that tool there to really help you understand how to use it. Then there's the training and certification process. How do I take these learnings, really understand how to use them in my context as an observer to actually go out and observe using the class tool and capture data. Then there's a whole element around what does that data collection and reporting look like and what does that lead to? That if we're just gathering information and it's not going anywhere, then that's not really leading to any growth, any improvement. And then also that there is a real critical need to make sure that this information is accessible and usable out in our community across contexts. And so that's where our community and affiliate programs are really key to making sure that you all have the information you need to also continue to evolve this tool alongside us. So all of those components are still true. This class measurement system has not changed. However, what we're doing is really evolving enhancements focused on some key goals and areas where we knew that the enhancements were most critical. We talked about this in the last webinar, but that's really about this increase of a focus on equity, on equitable use and implementation of the tool, increasing access so that more folks can more easily use and implement this tool, and really being thoughtful about the process of continuous improvement lens so that with everything we measure, we recognize that responsibility to link that to our own collective responsibility to continue to make education and educational experiences better for all children and all educators. So really, one way we've talked about this is think about I'll get mine, your smartphone. When you think about an update that might get run on your phone, sometimes those updates, they have different reasons for them, right? So sometimes it might be a security bug where there's something going on and it says, all right, this is a top priority, we got to fix this. And so it might happen overnight, you might not realize. And then there'll be certain changes that actually have allowed you to use your device more safely, for example. When we think about some of the enhancements for second edition, they run through a couple different threads. One of them is really around ensuring that we're putting in more supports to help the field use this tool more responsibly and equitably across contexts. That was our reason for this phone update, so to speak, as well as more accessible across people, across contexts, across the field. So those were a lot of our drivers for our updates. Then the other is just to make this all easier to use. The class tool has been in existence since the early 2000s. The first official class manual was published in 2008. And here we are in 2022, And it was time for some updates in terms of just the usability. We've learned a lot along the way that wasn't reflected in all of the tools that you've all been receiving. And so that's what the second edition is here to do, to continue to evolve alongside the field and hold our responsibility around prioritizing those evolutions that will be most impactful and were most readily requested from the field for the last 15 years. So we're really excited. I hope that is clear too, coming through, that this is not a different tool. This is not something brand new, but this is absolutely an enhanced experience for each of you that will help us all do our jobs a lot better and serve our communities a lot better as well. So let's talk about some of these components a little bit more. And those of you who are in the last webinar, you know about this, but again, it's the same system. It's the same class system underneath it all, but with some enhancements. So one logistics piece that I know you've all heard about is that we've taken the class pre-K tool as well as the class K through third tool and put those together into a single continuous pre-K to third tool, so that you can reduce the burden of use. It can really ease the way that programs can use this, and that ultimately that's moving us toward a future state where instead of 6 different isolated age groups and sets of resources, we're down to 3. And that can really support, again, the flexibility and ease of use in the field and help all of us understand how learning, development, and growth really do operate on a continuum for children as opposed to, at a single static moment in time. So you'll see that reflected in the combined class pre-K to third manual set that will be available starting in July. Similarly, the training, the observation training then is being collapsed in a way that allows more flexibility for participants based on who you're going to observe and how you're going to use the class tool to again align in ways that allow you to use this across the continuum of pre-K to third, or to select an area of focus if, for example, you really only focus on preschool settings, for example. And then we're also adding optional measurement items to take a more comprehensive look beyond just interactions and say, how do other elements of the classroom intersect with interactions to either enhance or detract from the success of those interactions? And so with the addition of the optional class environment tool, which would just be added into a class observation that you might already be doing, you're also getting an enhanced look at the types of interactions and what's supporting them in classrooms, which can really support your program and your educators and yourselves to be more focused when it comes to improvement efforts, when it comes to professional development, to really unpack essentially what are the different elements that are playing a role right now when we think about continuing to improve this experience for kids and children in this setting. So those are some of, again, our nuts and bolts, some of our what you're going to see. There are so many comments coming in that I'm not able to read. So I'm going to pause now because I'm sure that there are some lovely questions that my colleagues are taking. But if there are any that we wanted to elevate and talk through about this process of an evolution, about this approach of thinking about the class again as a better version of what it has always been, but it is still the class. So Emily, Gloria, to any of my colleagues out there, are there any questions that would be great to elevate in this moment and actually talk through for the group? I'll pause at this point, if so.
Not as of yet, Grace. We're good to move on.
All right, that's amazing. Okay, I didn't expect that. Well, good. Well, then I think we can talk more, and it's in the absence of seeing some of these things, and I realize that it still feels theoretical. So we're going to start to talk a little bit about some of those hows when we think about the transition and evolution for each of you in your different roles, knowing that there is a lot of flexibility and there's a long runway here to give folks time to make some of these shifts. So on the next slide, Gloria, before we do that, just to be able to show you, this is in draft form. The class is the class. Things will look a little bit different. They will look a little bit updated in the same way that the home screen of your smartphone might look a little more modernized, or there might be a term that makes more sense. It's a little bit more intuitive. those are the types of shifts by and large that are going to be in place that you'll notice and sometimes not totally notice as you make the shift to second edition. And so again, in the previous webinar, you can go back to watch some of these. You can see how even within something like language modeling, we have added more information to support a better, richer understanding of these concepts, as opposed to changing what those concepts are. It's helping to give more information, more accuracy, and quite frankly, make the tool just a lot easier to use. And here's a sneak peek of, it's not final form, but some of just the updated design that we'll have as well coming along with the second edition launches, with some updated materials that are just more user-friendly for you. So with that, let's talk about your how. So there are a lot of different pathways. I'm going to hand off to my colleague Katie, who's been instrumental in figuring out, this all sounds great, and I'm bought in. A lot of folks out there are saying, I love this idea. This is a great idea. I've been asking for these changes, right, in the class. But now that we're here, what does that mean for me tomorrow? What does that mean for my systems that have been building and growing on class? I'm here for the revisions. They sound great, but help me understand this better. So that's what we're going to shift to next, is some of that. What does it mean for you? Knowing that we can't talk through every possible permutation for each of you in this context, but we are going to provide the start of that with Katie, and then be able to point you to a lot of other resources where we can answer more specific questions based on your unique context, to make sure that everyone has what you need to make this transition. So over to you, Katie.
Yes. Thank you, Grace. And so we are here to answer, what does this mean for you? I've been watching some of the Q&A come in as Grace has been talking, and I know one of the big ones that I've seen going through is pre-K versus pre-K third, and how pre-K classrooms are very different than third grade classrooms. So you may not necessarily realize it, but our pre-K and our K3 tool have actually been the same tool since like 2008. So what we have done is taken this opportunity to just really think about the consolidation of the core tool and your ability to use it across the spectrum. But as you have pointed out, we greatly acknowledge that, yes, a third grade classroom does look incredibly different from a pre-K classroom. And this is why we will continue to offer a pre-K only training and pre-K only supports, but we will provide that opportunity for those that are interested and familiar in, kindergarten, first, second, and third grade classrooms to be able to take this opportunity and show that they can observe using the class tool in those age levels. So as we go through some of our transition supports, we'll talk about how we are embedding examples for those that are interested, but we acknowledge that many of you out there are pre-K certified, and if you would like to remain pre-K certified, the manual is still there to support you just in pre-K, and as well as a certification test and practice. So we can go ahead and get started. So making the move to class second edition. So starting in July, you will be able to experience the class second edition. Teachstone recommends that these programs really learn and adopt the class second edition, as these enhancements will make the tool easier and more accessible to use, in addition to offering additional qualities of measure to interactions. However, we know that this transition is going to take time. It's like our time is all valuable and we are all busy. So throughout the 2022-2023 school year, you will continue to just observe as you are and then recertify. Upon your recertification in the 2022-2023 school year, we strongly recommend that you go through our transition training. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment, but we are offering a free online asynchronous training. So no additional cost. You can go through this training online at your own time and pace. Or we have a facilitated transition training for those that are interested in being able to interact and engage with a Teachstone staff member. And then in the 2023-2024 school year, we will be taking the time to really update our recertification process a bit. And at that time, will be focusing on expanding some of our testing aspects that really do focus on some of these additions in the class second edition. But throughout the 2022-2023 school year, you we strongly recommend, for all the wonderful benefits that Grace just talked about, that you transition to the class second edition. However, if you feel more comfortable continuing on your first edition journey through this year, as you get more comfortable and familiar with class second edition, that is perfectly fine. I will say Teachstone throughout the next year is working on updating all of our materials to start matching this class second edition language. So we will be sunsetting our supports for first edition and moving our supports to second edition. You can go to the next. So for currently certified observers, starting on July 1, you will have the option and access to our free online observer transition course that will explore class second edition. So this course is really going to help dive into many of the elements that Grace just talked about, like what are these activity settings? How do I know how to code them? How do I score them? Equity considerations that Grace has talked about, like what does that mean and how does it actually come to life? All of this wonderful material will be in the free transition course, as well as practice exemplar videos and practice videos. So you'll be able to practice coding with the class second edition and just take take some videos. And then you don't need to do it. There's no like, okay, I did it, what do I do now? You go out and code class. If you want to do it in July and be prepared to be like, I want to understand this and like really enhance my coding ability in the fall, you can do that, but you don't need to recertify until your recertification happens. So the current certification, we feel very confident you are going to pass whether or not you are on first edition or on second edition, because the class is still class. As Grace said, the enhancements underneath should make this easier and for you, but when you're coding a video, you're still coding with the class tool. And then obviously, once you complete your certification, congratulations, you will remain a class observer. You can go ahead. So for observers trained by Teachstone between March 15th and June 30th, we know that you're like, oh my gosh, like this new cool thing is coming, what should I do? We strongly encourage you to continue getting your class observation training. Learn about the core of how interactions look in classrooms and continue on. But because we know that this new class second edition is coming, we will be offering for anyone that's going through a Teachstone observation training, a free facilitated transition course, and that will come with the new second edition manual. So please, class is still class. If you have a need to get it now, continue to learn about class, and Teachstone will really is committed to supporting you through that transition as come this summer. And then again, like if you took it in April, you're going to certify probably in April, May. You will recertify in 1 year. You don't need to feel like you have to put off your recertification process just because class second edition is coming out. Go to next. And then observers trained after July 1st by Teachstone. We'll talk about affiliates in a moment. We will be offering the class second edition. So come July 1st, if you're trained by Teachstone and going through our observation trainings, we'll be offering the class second edition training. As you noticed, we'll be offering a pre-K only observation training with that pre-K only certification, as well as a pre-K third observation training and pre-K third certification. So you will have either option to go through. So we are removing our K3 observation and certification, and we will only be offering the pre-K only, and this slightly expand it for K3, and we will expand that from pre-K all the way up to 3rd now. Affiliates. So affiliates, we know that this is a hot topic for many of you. So we will actually be hosting an informational webinar about these details, more about the class 2nd edition details. We know there are many questions that go much deeper than what we have covered in this particular, in our training before or this webinar. So we'll be offering an affiliate specific webinar, and be on the lookout for that soon. That'll be coming up in probably May or June. And then we strongly encourage you to go online and explore those class 2nd edition trainings come July. Really understand what these changes are and what is coming. But you can continue to deliver your current observation training just as like Teachstone. We're continuing our 1st edition observation training. We strongly encourage you to continue to train those observers. And then you will, throughout the course of 2022, we will be working on more formal communication, but in very early 2023, you will have supports that will transition you to the class 2nd edition observation training. So we expect approximately a 6-month delay. So that'll put us in January 2023 for the transition to class 2nd edition. And we will be providing very similar transition supports that we are doing with observers. So that is our current plan for affiliates, and we'll have a lot more to come starting in May or June and throughout 2023 as we support you. Are there any key questions? Okay. And then program leaders and administrators. We have more. We just want you to continue being really the cheerleaders and advocates for class and those like interactions that matter. So you can learn more at teachstone.com, and we want you to stay in touch with Teachstone, continue to ask your questions, reach out to your class representative, and support your teachers, observers, affiliates, and coaches as we go through this transition. So as I said, for affiliates, we will also be building out more intentional supports, like what can I do for my organization? How can I be the leader and talking about class 2nd edition with them? We will be providing more intentional supports for you as well, and more information to come soon on that. And then coaches is just very, very similar to our administrators. So please continue to stay in touch with Teachstone and continue to support your teachers. Interactions matter. That is the heart of why we are all here and why we want to really support the teachers and the children. So please, please, please just continue doing what you're doing. And as we make these updates, simplify language, that should hopefully just simplify your job as you talk about class with your teachers. And then I did realize that we didn't have anything for teachers in there, but we are working on ways to intentionally provide a like teacher training on class 2nd edition, so that we know the fear of having an observation in the fall and like what that anxiety can do. And we want to help quell it and like also keep the teachers' fears calm as well. So we will be providing intentional supports for teachers to also have that opportunity to learn about class 2nd edition and, calm them about how the class is still class, and really these terms are just a lot more friendly, less academic, and teachers should be able to understand them in a much more user-friendly way. So a sample program pathway. So we have so there's a little bit like our asynchronous cost training is free. And then our facilitated transition training comes with a cost. So there are a couple different ways that you could go about this transition training, depending on what's best for you and what's best for your program. So at no cost, you can go through this asynchronous transition support. That'll be the lowest time commitment, but you'll have the most basic support. And but you can do it on your own time, at your own pace, and you could, create like a little cohort of people at your organization to like go through study sessions together if you want it. We are also, which we haven't actually talked about in depth in this training, but we are launching observer support trainings as well. And so if you haven't heard about the Teachstone observer support trainings, these are very focused just support training. So we are doing one that's focusing on bias and one that's focusing on DLL classrooms right now. So the goal of these trainings is to have observers think about their practices when it comes to bias and when it comes to observing DLL and what some of those differences in a classroom they may see. We understand that there are a lot more variety of than just DLL and bias that I just mentioned. And we are working to build out a more complete series of observation training supports that'll also focus on, special settings such as FCC. So more details to come, and look out on the Teachstone website for as we build those out. But I don't have more information about that right now. But similar to our transition training, we will have an online version of those as well as a facilitated version. So this online version would come for free at no access for observers to be able to engage in that material. And then I know the manual, do I need a new manual, is a huge question. Obviously, we know that people like print, and we strongly encourage you to get a printed manual for those that prefer it. It will come with the facilitated transition training, and we are bundling it for a discount during our recertification period. But we are giving digital access. It will be view only. You will not be able to print it, but we will give a view only digital access manual to currently certified observers. So if you want to look at it first, be able to see like, what is this? I want more details. You will have that ability. And then another sample pathway is just a little bit more higher cost and time requirements, but you have that opportunity to engage with a Teachstone staff member, ask your questions, go through an observation video with a cohort of observers, and really learn how to use your class 2nd edition manual and some of these enhanced practices. So we have a virtually facilitated transition training. And as I mentioned earlier, we will have a print manual set. We will also have this add-on class environment observer training that will be an asynchronous training. So you will be able to do that at your own pace, but that will come with a print manual and a packet of score sheets as well. And then those observer supports that I talked about earlier, we are also building those out to be facilitated trainings as well. So you have a mix of options for what best suits your needs and what best suits your program, whether you want to go for the asynchronous low cost option, or if you prefer a little bit more of that facilitated touch, but as this slide says, it would come with just a little bit of a higher cost. Go ahead. And then I hope many of you have probably seen this slide before, but just to lay out our very broad timeline of experiencing all of these enhancements. I know we've been talking about July 1st a lot, and that is when the class 2nd edition observation training and manual set becomes available. And then shortly after that, we are launching the class environment. Class environment is for pre-K kindergarten as well as infant toddler. I know we have not necessarily been talking a lot about our infant toddler class enhancements right now because those are coming in 2023. The class environment will work for pre-K as well as infant toddler, and it will work with either the infant or the toddler class tool. And then we are also launching a class environment for the teachers. So we'll have supports for them. And then in 2023, that's when we really talk about our infant toddler class enhancements, as well as our Spanish enhancements for observation training, the manual, as well as we're working on these observer supports and our affiliates. So we have a lot more coming to follow along with this initial launch throughout 2022 and well into 2023. Okay. So continuous, so as Grace mentioned, just really circling back, we know that class is that proven approach to improving quality and children outcomes at scale. And it's really a success to quality improvement as an intentional and systematic approach that drives that cyclical ongoing process. And that is why Class Second Edition also focuses on some of those extra enhancements of data collection. So not only are we now recommending that you collect those core interactions, which we know are at the heart of children outcomes, but also activity settings. So when we say activity settings, what does that really mean? We're trying to see what the children are being exposed to in a variety of formats and activities. So our activities are SEL, social studies, math, literacy, art, and then our formats are whole group, small group, one-on-one time, transitions. So we really want to see that children have that opportunity to experience different contents in a variety of different formats. They're like, especially in preschool, you do not need to only learn math in whole group or only learn literacy one-on-one. There are so many different ways that children can be exposed to all of these different concepts. So that's really what we're looking for, and to be able to help you as coaches or teachers or administrators drive that improvement by sparking either retrospect inspiration, what were you doing in this moment, how can we build upon it, or sparking that idea of like, hey, you know, maybe the social studies wasn't really seen. Why? Like maybe it was just, you know, that didn't happen that day, or what are these patterns that we're seeing, such that we can be intentional about what we're trying to weave into the day for children. And then environment. We know that the environment is just such a critical aspect to like really making teachers' life easier, to supporting interactions. So all of these aspects of the environment that are chosen were specifically chosen for reasons that like support the teacher-child interaction. So one of my favorite examples is actually sightlines, and how if you don't have sightlines throughout the classroom, it's really hard to be reactive and proactive to children's needs, because if you can't see them, that just makes your job as a teacher so much harder. So the environment is just really paired to be like a lightweight tool, but really, really focus on those elements that the teacher can control in a classroom, and what elements are going to help improve a teacher's ability to like strengthen those interactions, so that's not impeding them. So that is, and so that's what we want to see with the continuous quality improvement. So at Teachstone, our mission is to help every child reach their full potential by measuring and improving those interactions that matter most.
And just a reminder, you know, as I started with, and thank you, Katie, I know there's a lot of logistics and a lot of questions, and now that I was able to read chat and comments, thank you all for being so engaged. It's great to see the questions come in. But again, to circle back to where we started, really with our shared responsibility. So we feel that very much here as an organization at Teachstone, and as the folks who are really putting out the class tool, a great deal of responsibility to ensure that we are putting out something that can be used in a way that is equitable, that is fair, that is supporting the field in the ways that it ought to, as opposed to somehow detracting from that inadvertently. And so, we see all of this when we think about linking arms with you all. We're all in this together. So both here at Teachstone and our role with the class tool itself, and then everything else that comes with it. So when you think about the PD that comes after that, or the ways in which this data transforms into conversations, we need to link arms right now. We need to be on the same team and on the same page. And so this is our contribution and our commitment at Teachstone to making some evolutions to hold up our end of the bargain. But we can't continue to do this work unless we do it alongside you and continue to learn from you as we launch the second edition, and hopefully continue to make this work more meaningful for those in the field. So this is our personal mission, but we really can't do this unless we have our arms linked with you out there in the field, and that we're really all moving toward the same goal, which is to make classrooms better for all kids and all adults in them. And ultimately, we know that makes our world a better place, and we have to be on the same page there. So thank you everyone for being here. I know that there are a lot of specific questions. We do have a little bit of time, I think, to open them up for those that have not been addressed, but I do appreciate very much that our colleagues have been answering them in the chat along the way. But let's go ahead and we can open the floor. So again, Emily and Gloria, if there are items that we want to raise at this point, or if folks have other questions to drop into the Q&A, that would be lovely so that we can take time to address them, and also know that there are a lot of opportunities for individual follow-up. So if you have a unique question that's specific to you and your context, then reaching out to our team so that we can work with you is our recommended next step on what might be unique to you and how we can help you if some of those pathways that Katie presented were not totally applicable to your context. So again, let's open the floor for some questions, and thank you all, and thank you, Katie, for making sense of this transition moment for all of us.
Thank you, Grace. We do have a few questions to get through. The first that I'll throw at you all is in relation to trainers. So will trainers need to recertify on class second edition? And related to that, can you only certify for second edition through Teachstone until 2023 because of the way the affiliate trainer sort of schedule is working?
You want to take those, Katie?
So will trainers, I'm going to assume that as a trainer, you are also a certified observer, whether or not you are using the observer aspect of that certification. However, yes, trainers, as a certified class observer, even if you're using that for training, you will need to go through the transition updates and really learn about class second edition. But as we said, you can go through the updates at any time before your recertification, but you do not need to recertify early. And then, I'm sorry, Gloria, can you please repeat the second piece?
Yeah, it was just, can you only certify for second edition through Teachstone at the moment until 2023?
So Teachstone will only be offering the second edition training through 2023. If you are being trained by an affiliate, you do have the option to go through your affiliate observation training and then doing the online asynchronous training to learn about class second edition right away. Or Teachstone also has the facilitated transition training as well. So I understand that that's not the ideal pathway for many observers. However, if you're being trained by an affiliate, you will have the ability to learn about class second edition right away. And it is why our commitment is to the field to get out this affiliate training as soon as possible. It just unfortunately does take us a bit of time to release all the material, and we don't want to hold back these wonderful enhancements until we can roll it out to affiliates.
Thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
Another question, How much more time will the environments tool add to an observation?
That's a great question. So the class environment tool will only add approximately another 15 minutes to a observation. So the idea of class environment is to really maximize the amount of time that you are in the classroom by collecting the most relevant data on the environment. So you would come into a classroom, you would spend 10 to 15 minutes collecting aspects of the environment, then jump into your class cycles. If there's anything about the environment that you maybe missed or changed at the end of your class observation, you would have the opportunity to look back over your environment data, and then you would be done with your observation. So approximately 15 minutes.
We've been getting a lot of questions about infant toddler. I know you touched on this very briefly. What can people expect with those changes? When are those changes going to be coming?
So those changes will be coming in early 2023. We're expecting right after the new year. So we will be talking about more about those changes a little bit later this year as we have more details for you about the changes to infant toddler, but it will be we will be doing very similar enhancements to the infant toddler tool, and be on the lookout. We will have similar transition pathways and transition trainings for those who are infant or toddler certified. And we are looking to, especially at those young ages where children are developing so quickly, much more intentionally like merge those two, because we know many of our colleagues really want to be able to focus on infant and toddler.
Do children have to be present during the environment's observation?
We strongly recommend that children are present during the environment observation. While you could probably, in theory, collect that data, many classrooms are packed up or put away that would not provide an accurate representation necessarily of the environment for the actual children and for the teacher. So we recommend that you just add that on to your class environment your class observation, and really just do that while you're in the classroom. If there are extenuating circumstances that you need to do that, we recommend that obviously almost call, teach, learn, and consult with us a little bit to see what your needs are. But we strongly recommend, in order to get the best picture of quality, you do that while the class is in session.
What can you tell us about the Spanish part of this? Is all of this going to be available in Spanish?
Well, eventually all of this will be in Spanish. So we are working on translating the class and class environments from English into Spanish. Our Spanish will just follow a little bit after. So we'll have a Spanish observation training that will be released in January, but we will also be working on getting a Spanish manual completed and available for especially some of the bilingual folks who might be more comfortable having a Spanish manual available in the fall. And class environment, especially the teacher-facing materials, will be released in Spanish this fall. So yes, it will be in Spanish. Timelines are just a little bit staggered from our English-facing material.
Mm. And will there be, we've got a couple questions about class group coaching. Will there be enhancements to that course?
We are still working through what the enhancements will look like to class group coaching, but as Grace and I have been saying, class is still class. Class group coaching is still applicable. So continue to teach it. Talking about the domains and the dimensions and how to improve those interactions are still very applicable. And we will be providing at least a brief, I don't want to say necessarily one pager, but a brief slip to help class group coaching coaches be able to understand what some of those nuances might be for class second edition. So
Okay, just scrolling through to see what else hasn't been answered. Will certified class observers be able to receive free copies of the manual to prepare for their recertification? I guess that depends on your recertifying.
Yes. So upon recertification, we will bundle it with a physical copy of the manual that will be at a discount, and that is our recommended option. However, if you are interested in just an online non-print, it will not be printable and it will not be downloadable. However, if you want to use a digital version of the class manual to reference during your recertification and just be able to read the new manual, it will be digitally available online for you.
All right, I think we've covered most of them. Thank you for taking that rapid fire, Katie. I was trying to find some questions for Grace, but
like keep on routing them over there. Thank you.
That's okay.
All right, so last thing to remind you all of, a lot of the answers to your questions are also available online. If you want to learn more, I'll have my colleague put the link in the chat, but teachstone.com // class second edition. You'll also see it if you just go on teachstone.com, you will see a link that will take you straight to that page. A lot of what you saw with the transition pathways are online. And again, a lot of FAQs are available online as well. So please take a moment to look at that resource. But other than that, thank you all for spending some time with us today. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Emily, in the background helping out in the chat. You will have your recording and the slide deck in about 24 hours, so just hang tight for that. And we will see you all next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.